So I'm gonna introduce our speaker. He's a man who needs, I'm sure, no introduction. And he asked that we didn't do a long formal introduction, and so Mayor, I'm going to ask you to come up here. But I just, I want to say that it's great to have somebody in your office that cares about the community, that listens to people, is really dedicated. And so if you could pass along to Jody Warren our thanks, that would be great. Mayor Larson, thank you.
He says he worked all night on that one. Thank you, Brad. That was a unique introduction. I want to thank the Chamber for this opportunity, not only for me, but for the city to spotlight a lot of what we've been doing the past year and for the year ahead. Last week I decided on the theme of today was moving forward. It seemed like the appropriate thing. I was reflecting on some of the challenges from the past year and what lies ahead. And a day after deciding on this, Finance Officer Bob Wharton and the City Administrator Bob Larson and I, as we usually do, went down to the annual economic forecasting conference put on by the Economic Development Council of Seattle and King County to kind of hear what was going to happen. They always bring in about 3 speakers every year to look at a global, national, and regional forecasting of what's to come. And I was pleased that all 3 of them gave a much more positive sort of theme as I was doing here. In fact, one of the 3, Ken Goldstein, happens to be, I think, kind of the Eeyore of the group. He's always the one with the most pessimistic outlook. And even he gave a more positive one. In fact, he said that he's less, that what gives him even some confidence beyond all the threats in Washington, D.C. with the fiscal cliff and what's going on in Europe are a number of fundamentals of which I thought were notable to bring your attention today. So one is an increase in energy supply, particularly in areas like natural gas, that will act to basically hold energy prices down in the coming year. Secondly, is all the poisoned assets with mortgages and foreclosures and all that. Much of that's moved through the system, and so we're coming out the back of that, or that's lessening and letting up. And then lastly, as I mentioned last year, the state was predicting about a job loss of 25,000 positions in state and local government in the past year. And again, about the worst of that's over, and we're coming out the back end of that. So those fundamentals sort of lay a lot of good groundwork for these things moving in a more positive direction in 2013. As we looked at the housing starts in Snoqualmie, you can see that, again, as folks said, there's going to be a recovery, but it'll be slow and steady, and you can see that certainly in what housing starts have happened in Snoqualmie. Even since the official end of the recession was announced in 2009, we once again have had a year of slow and steady growth. At the peak, we were in Snoqualmie, we were doing about 1 home per day was coming into the city. It was interesting, I noted in the last year we grew by almost exactly 1 person per day, so at least we returned that number. We're just, sorry, back on that. We're about 11,320. This is as of April this past year, 2012. So last year I did I always focus on both things, on both the operational side, the staffing, and also infrastructure, but most of the emphasis was on the staffing side of it. This year I want to shift a little more to the infrastructure, but I want to do a review of last year and sort of say where we've landed with things. But just before that, I want to make clear to folks that don't understand, municipal governments are fundamentally divided into 2 big major sections. One is what's called the general fund, which involves all of the fundamental services of police, fire, parks, public, planning, building staff, and so forth. And then all of the facilities, buildings, vehicles, equipment, and so forth that's needed to support the staff in doing their job. On the other side of the equation is the enterprise, what are called enterprise funds, and those are derived from revenues such as fees for a measurable service that you're getting, such as water. You can measure how much you're getting, you pay a fee for that water you receive, and sewer and stormwater and so forth. And those are utility fees, not taxes. Otherwise, it's a general tax toward a general service. And by state law, we have to keep these buckets separate from each other. So what's key is when it comes to all the personnel working on the enterprise side of this equation, there wasn't much of a challenge because the council does have the ability to adjust these fees. So long as we can tie it to the actual cost of delivering those services, we can adjust the fees accordingly and keep up with those costs of doing business. And so this has not been where our biggest challenge has been. We've been in pretty good shape here. On the other equation, this was my focus last year because of things like the 1%, the IMIT initiative that did the 1% cap on property taxes, and we have operational costs going up in the neighborhood of 3.5–4% per year. You have an unsustainable picture where cities like school districts are going to have to get into a normal mode of every 5 years or so going out for a levy lift in order to keep a sustainable business. And so here's where the squeeze was last year, and I was making that case for the need to make an adjustment, or we would move from a proactive stance into probably more of a reactive stance. And then the last piece that I'm going to do a little more focus on is under the umbrella of public works. The enterprise falls under the umbrella of public works, but some of the pieces that they have purview over are things like taking care of streets and fire hydrants and so forth. But some of those pieces, like streets, which is a big expensive piece, like you see here, it's green, like the general fund. That's a general fund item because a street is a general. You can't go out and measure how much you use a street and charge you a fee accordingly. It falls under general fund, but this includes the sidewalks, street trees, curbs, and so forth. So it's a pretty expensive item, and of course every dollar spent here puts pressure on that general fund and vice versa. So you can imagine with that 1% cap, it's a pretty big squeeze in that area. So I'll come back here in a moment to speak about that. So as you know, part of the case was leading up to the levy operations levy we put out to the voters this past November. We were very relieved and pleased to see that the voters did support that levy. That was about 24 cents per thousand for a home, on an average $430,000 home. And some home that's approximately about $100 a home. We get about $400,000 of revenue in that to primarily meet a lot of those operational needs. We split that bucket. Frankly, most of the staffing needs for growing with the growth in the state could pretty much use most of that money. But we've decided for a couple of reasons to be a little more cautious about that. One is I'm still a little concerned more about what is going to happen with the fiscal cliff in Washington, D.C. or Europe, and that things could kind of tip sideways for a bit. And so I'm a little reticent to have us commit too much to staffing, only to have to pull back and doing layoffs. That would be something that we don't like to avoid, and the council concurred with that. The other benefit is that we have been having a backlog of a lot of capital needs in the operations of the things that, buildings, new carpet, vehicles and so forth, that we can now put about half this money toward addressing that backlog of capital, which we, in some cases, put one-time revenues toward, and that's not a sustainable way to build an ongoing budget. An example of that would be, carpet, new painting, fixing siding at the fire station, or one big item in the police station is the fire range. We have to mine all the lead out of the fire range that's been going in there for about a decade, and a lot of toxic particles can get to the HVAC system. The HVAC system needs to be scrubbed. And while a few of you might think there's poetic justice in the officers getting a taste of their own lead, it's something that the state and federal governments discourage. We can finally get on top of those. Now, so the monies that are going into the personnel side of it, we are taking about half of that money and committing it to, as advertised, to one firefighter. And so I would say as the city grows, the one risk that we're concerned about experiencing is multiple calls. So we don't have enough staffing to really feel comfortable that we're going to be able to cover multiple calls. If 2 or 3 calls come out at the same time, and now we're going to send out 2 crews. We're always relying on our interlocals with other agencies to back us up in that case. So that'll be a step in a good direction toward minimizing that risk. The second position will go toward one staff member who will split their time equally between the Parks Department and also helping take care of maintaining all of this operational capital on the general fund side of the equation, and then working in the Parks Department with the balance of their time. And of course, that's seasonal work, where oftentimes the parks work can get pretty intense during the summer months and then wane during the winter months inside and work very efficiently to be able to move that around. So moving back to infrastructure for a moment, here's a little snapshot of some of what keeps my works director awake at night. If you were to take all the water piping in the city and lay it out in a straight line underground, we could go all the way to Seattle and back with the water line, 64 miles. You could take the sewer line and go all the way to Seattle with the sewer. With streets, it'd be 42 miles of street, center line streets, and again, you could put sidewalks on both sides of I-90 and take that all the way into Seattle in terms of how much sidewalks there is, and again, almost all the way to Seattle with a trail. 36 parks and 6,000 trees throughout all of our streets and parks. So it's quite a bit to hang on to. Now, by state law, cities are also required to put together 6-year and 20-year capital improvement plans to show, hey, you've got all your infrastructure inventory, how are you going to take care of it over the coming years? And you got to lay it all out and specify which item comes up in what year, when it needs attention, and how you're going to pay for it. And all the cities have always been comfortable with how you're going to pay for it, usually all the blanks are filled in with OPM, other people's money, or grants. Well, 3 years ago, we started moving into a new normal where the messages from the state and the federal government was, you're not going to be able to rely on grants anymore. This is going to be kind of really seriously ratcheted back because of the crisis, the fiscal crisis of the state. So we were suddenly in a mode saying, how do we stay on top of this stuff and really start making a big shift here and look at this infrastructure and figure out how we're going to pay for this without assuming that a lot of these grants are going to be coming through in the same fashion. And so this is why we started doing a lot of, well, I'll go through some of these programs. We've always been looking for cost-cutting measures in any circumstance, but of course the infrastructure, when that burden on the infrastructure suddenly increases dramatically, like I said, the streets sit in the general fund. You can imagine with the pinch already on the general fund with the 1% cap, suddenly that burden is every dime coming out to take care of infrastructure now is putting even greater pressure on that general fund. So this is why the council and administration had to start making some pretty tough decisions or choices. When we're looking for opportunities to track the organization, such as several years ago when the assistant police chief resigned to replace that position, or eventually replaced it with another officer on the street. Right now we're looking to consolidate some of the maintenance work of both public works and parks into one step, so it's less higher level management positions and more feet on the ground actually getting the work done for citizens. We implemented a whole robust series of fiscal policies, which I've spoken about before, such as the one-time revenues to make sure we're not building an ongoing budget on one-time revenues that are going to disappear when all the growth from the rich stops. Building up robust reserves. An example of reserves is creating a fleet program so that we're not surprised every 15 years when a quarter or a three-quarter or $500,000 fire truck comes up to be replaced, that we haven't put money aside to replace that vehicle or haven't been building that reserve over the years. And then lastly, partnerships, which we've been pretty successful just recently with, particularly with the YMCA, where the YMCA has assumed the operational liabilities and burden of running that what otherwise would have been the Central Community Center, and the police contract with North Bend. Now, the really, really popular stuff that the council embraced, and I can assure you that we don't have much fun with this stuff, but it's, there's no way of ducking it. We have to go out and look at ways that you can call it what you want, but it's sort of raising fees, raising taxes. The first is we've definitely taken advantage of our legal capacity to increase property taxes by 1% per year. That's the maximum allowed. We did thankfully get the voter-approved levy in November, which put us in much better stead. We implemented the transportation benefit district with a $20 fee and car tax. Increased the taxes on utilities, which is a tax on whether it's your cable, your phone, your cell phone, your water, sewer, all utilities, and then increase the utility fees or taxes themselves. And then lastly, the council just concurred with our recommendation or administration's recommendations to implement a transport fee for any basic and advanced life services from the fire department. So when a fire department crew transports any person to a hospital, their medical insurance will receive a bill for the cost of that transport. Many cities are turning to this tool. We don't anticipate that it will result in residents or the city see any kind of increase in cost to them, because most of the medical insurance is structured or built to accept those fees or costs anyway. And in fact, as you recall, last year, a new assessment increased our insurance rating that puts us in the top 15 percentile in the country and dropped insurance rates for Snoqualmie residents overall, so we don't anticipate that any rates would go up. The big benefit of that one is our calculations on the revenue that should be generated from that would allow us to hire, which we're moving forward on, a second firefighter. So we'll actually have 2 new firefighters coming on board, and if the projections pan out correctly, we might be able to hire even a third, which would give us a full complement of the crew for daytime shifts and allow us again to mitigate those risks for responding to multiple calls. Now combine this with what we've had successful efforts working with local and regional partners on grant money, and this is just a snapshot of 2012, some of the monies we got from the 2% casino litigations, for example. One was the $50,000 purchase of a generator for the community center, YMCA, so that now becomes a full functioning emergency operations shelter. Muckleshoot Tribe contribution to the Topol Roundabout and so forth. I won't read through all of that. But the net is the bottom. Well, actually, notable too, because folks here, our ROA even contributed $40,000 to repairing some street trees and little leaks in the county with some parks and trails. All to a $3.2 million contribution, which is pretty substantial. Now, All of the federal and state grant money regionally, most of that gets piped through the Puget Sound Regional Council, which is a 4-county advisory council that tries to coordinate how money is best put to use, all the hundreds of millions of dollars that comes to the state and federal grants. So at least the right hand knows what the left hand is doing. A subset of the PSRC is a committee called RPEC, the Regional Project Evaluation Committee. And this committee reviews all of those grant submittals and proposals and then makes recommendations for how that money should be spent. The Valley, for the last few years, has enjoyed some great representation on the Sound Cities Association, which is a collection of 35 cities. The moniker is 35 cities, 1 million people, one voice. Mayor Geary has been on there for some 6 years, I think, or 5 years on the board of the Sound Cities Association. I've served on there for a couple of years now, just signed up for another term. But we have a nice representation on that board. The Suburban Cities, or SCA, has 4 seats on the RPEC committee out of 44 that sit on that RPEC committee. A very important committee to have a voice on. And our Public Works Director, Dan, we got on there. In fact, a couple weeks ago, Dan, there was a move to kind of replace Dan on there, and I was pleased to have Mayor Geary there along with me to say, hey, look, this is one of the few representatives from the rural cities that we often get sort of ignored up here as cities in the rural area. We should have a voice on there. And I was grateful to have Ken on that board because he confirmed that we kept Dan on there. But here's what happens when Dan sits on that RPEC committee, what happened this past year, and this is the crux of the story I want to tell today. So all the cities, we have representatives from the governor's office, you've got ferry districts, transit districts, cities and everything from all 4 counties in there. They're all vying for this money, and they kind of come in not respecting this as a new normal, saying, where's my need grant? And the response has been, okay, we get it. We're bleeding here at the state level, and we're making huge sacrifices and cuts are going out for new revenues. What are you doing? And if someone couldn't come up with a good story to say, what sort of sacrifices, cuts, or additional revenues they're looking for in hard decisions or unpopular things they're doing in their districts or cities, they weren't going to get much of a hearing. Whereas Dan was down at the end of the table kind of going, here's what we've done. And you could go through all this tough stuff that we've been putting in place, all the money we've gathered locally and regionally. And here for 2012 was the result of some of that influence and effort. So through Transportation Improvement Board, Puget Sound Regional Council, Washington State Department of Transportation, Housing and Urban Development, a total combined of almost $6.4 million that we just acquired the city of Snoqualmie in the past year. You combine that with the local and you have upwards of over $99.5 million. And to put that in perspective, last year it was roughly just short of $5 million that we collected total in property taxes, and next year will be 5.4. So that just gives you an idea of what the size that money means. And this is what gives me the confidence to say we're moving forward in 2013. So this is a pretty good story for us. So on those projects, a big chunk of that money is primarily for the downtown project and the Toco Roundabout. So what's so exciting about this? Because this is not taking care of existing infrastructure. This is new infrastructure. Why does this matter? This is a key important project to the city because mostly what this is about is economic development. This is about facilitating the moving forward with the proposal to build a 250-room convention center hotel expansion of the Salish across the river here. I'm sorry, not across the river, excuse me. Do not repeat it. Across the 202 up in the upper parking lot up in this area here. And this could not happen without addressing how the traffic from that facility would be run through the poor geometry of this current area where it's very dangerous pulling into the parking lot off of the falls here or even just turning on Toco Road. So this straightens all that mess out. The projections on the Salish expansion is that we could bring upwards of $500,000 additional revenue to the city in ongoing revenues. And so that would do a great deal to diversify our revenue portfolio and again take the pressure off those general fund issues that I discussed. So again, very important project and a huge piece of news. This project is now fully funded and we're looking to move forward with construction as early as March. The last thing I want to say on this is many of you have heard about tribal concerns on this. There's been some change in the personnel of the tribe that's been involved in this project. We want to give them the time to come up to speed on some of the details. But in the current alignment, we did do a full cultural assessment of what was there, and it's embedded in the project is the full cost for having our archaeological representative on site doing infrastructure for the tribe. We will take their concerns very seriously as this project moves forward. The second, I touched on this briefly last year, was the downtown, phase 2 of downtown. We finished the first phase on this side, on the east side of the 202 last year, or a year and a half or so ago. And now we're working on just really cleaning all this up with beautiful new boardwalk out in front of the museum, new curbs and streets and sidewalks and trails going all the way all the other end of town. Nice new medians in the middle of the road for gateway signs, welcoming people to town, traffic calming sort of designs and so forth. And again, here's so the good news here is we're now reaching about 50% of funding on this, and there's some other pieces falling into place. We might be able to start hitting this in some phases. Another big project. This is fully funded by state, I'm sorry, not by city revenues. It's very difficult to get any kind of grant funding or matches for interior residential streets that don't have a regional purpose or function. And so this is a pretty significant project. So 5 streets over near the bus barn on Cedar, and some of the Greek streets over by the high school right here of Beta, Gamma, and 90th in a horribly dilapidated street of Falls Avenue right here. And this project, again, is also fully funded. It's complete. This is a complete rebuild. This infrastructure is completely failed. Not only the surface, but all the utilities on the ground need to be replaced. So everything's going to be dug up and replaced. Sewer pipelines and storm drains put in. In fact, it lacks storm drains in many of these neighborhoods. And this was funded by the 2011 general obligation bond that the council approved. At the same time we were going for the bond, we increased the bump in our bond rating to an 88 minus, which dropped the interest rates for us as well. And the wonderful news is that the bids came in a couple weeks ago, and the other windfall here is that the bids were $600,000 less than our engineer's estimates. So this was a nice project that our former Parks Director, Gwen, worked on. This was one of the first times we just had a lot of partners come together and work to get a field done. This was sort of a leftover rocky, wheat-strewn field that kids were playing and scraping knees up on. And we put these partners together with King County, the Falls Little League, and the Snohomish Valley Youth Soccer Association that put $90,000 into this $150,000 project to get this beautiful field redone and built and fully irrigated, which is completed this year, or this past year. This is the Jeannie Hansen Park. I spoke about this briefly last year. As I mentioned, the city has entered into a partnership. We're shifting the plan on this because we want to convert these soccer fields to artificial turf so you can get 3 times the play and better revenue off those fields and reduce the amount of water we're throwing on those fields and maintenance overall. This is also an ongoing reduction in operational cost to go this approach. We still have some details to work out with the developer to get this project moving. We hope to have it done, moving as early as this fall, but it may slip into 2014, so keep an eye on this one. Another notable thing was the change in our police command. We were well served by Chief Schaefer, who served in the city of Snohomish for 23 years, 8 years as a police chief, and left a wonderful, great legacy behind. We brought on Captain Almquist, Nick, and this past July, and he came to us from the Redmond Police Department, did a great ad, and of course, you know, I want to make perfectly clear that this is not photoshopped. This is how he showed up after he was sworn in, not after the North Bend contract was signed, although he may end up in that. So congratulations, Mayor Henry. That's your new police chief. Yeah. Well, and I appreciate that. Frankly, that's a quality. The mayor said, obviously, a man with a sense of humor. I think for small town and small communities like ours, that's an essential quality you want in a police chief. Is just a very approachable, high-touch person. We have that in both the captain and the chief, and they've just been great to work for. He's a longtime resident of North Bend, and just jumped in and really hit the ground running. Where are you guys? Why don't both of you stand if you recognize them? I should have told you to wear your uniform today. Yeah, you know, we didn't approve the new uniform budget he wanted. I think he rated his daughter's Lady Gaga. So a lot of folks have been asking about the new North Bend contract, police contract with North Bend. I think this is a great feather in the cap for both communities. People have talked about this for decades, and the fact that folks like both chiefs and Bob Larson and others that have worked on this actually got this done, and to the members, council members, and the mayor of North Bend as well. Kudos to you all. I just stayed in the background and made sure I didn't mess it up. But there's an 18-month clause in the King County contract that gives them time to wind down and out of that. So just so folks know on timelines, that the contract was executed on September 10th of this last year, and so with the 18 months, the start date where you won't see officers in North Bend won't be until March of 2014. The hiring will start in late summer, early fall of this year. We're looking to bring on at least 6 new officers to cover the North Bend contract, possibly 7, depending on the North Bend Council's decisions. We also have 3. It'll bring up the total of commissioned officers. We have 14 to 20 or 21, again, depending on the decision. We also have 3 civilian support staff in the police department. 1 comes with the North Bend contract, so we'll bring the civilian support staff to 4. And that will be serving a total population just over 17,000 people. So what are the benefits for Snoqualmie? I'll speak to our benefits. I'll let you speak to yours in March. One is just the economies of scale, the fact that we don't need, the same chief, the same captain, and command staff can serve both populations without an increase in cost. Another example is the IT, the same computer or database or software that's tracking information for a population of 11,000 can easily expand to 17,000. So again, those are some examples of one. Superior backup, often we might have an officer tied up doing a testimony at a court hearing, even our staff will offend him for backup, and so by having more officers overall, both cities will have a higher level of backup. Additional support staff, that's the civilian staff in a similar fashion, again, just to cover the bases. More opportunities for professional development and advancement will improve recruitment and retention for officers. Just better, obviously the same agency doing the whole valley will be able to have a common intelligence about what's going on in the valley and share that internally. And a possibility for an investigator. As the city has grown in cases that be more and more complex, we often have an officer that's pulled off the street because they're involved in writing up extensive reports. So having one person we can really give that expertise to can keep more of the officers down the street on a basis. And basically overall, again, it's addressing some of those other issues, trying to, without raising taxes, find a way to sustain the level of service without increasing costs or just finding efficiencies. And again, economies of scale provides that for us. And just, we think it's like fundamentally a stronger city relationship between the 2 cities itself is a great benefit. So notable things that happened this year is we were, our staff, folks like Mike Roy and Harris were instrumental in working with these 2 agencies, the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency and Puget Sound Clean Cities Coalition, to actually establish, starting back in about 2007, I think it was, developing a criteria for trying to raise the bar for folks to create more sustainable fleets that were emitting less carbon and more efficient and more cost effective. And we're probably one of the smallest cities that were involved in that whole process, and we just received a 3-star rating or award this year, and are in there competing with a lot of larger agencies. So that was a nice feather in our cap. Back in 2010, we received a coveted award. It's not easy to get from the Governor Office, a Smart Communities Award for the Downtown Master Plan. And I mentioned that only because we had a follow-up with the completion of that first phase on the east side of the 202 with the Washington chapter of the American Public Works Association. It chose this as the Project of the Year award back in May 2012, so that was just a huge coup to everyone involved in that. And then again, this is part of Gwen's and Pat Anderson's efforts with and of course with the YMCA as well. The national, or it's the, I always get this, Commercial Real Estate Development Association, their Washington chapter does a very prestigious award for a Community Impact of the Year award, and they awarded that to the city of Snoqualmie, the community, and the YMCA. This was a great partnership that I put together, and we beat out some pretty hefty competition here. This was we were competing with the Chihuly Garden and Glass Museum that had just been installed at the Pacific Science Center, the LeMay American Car Museum that was built down in Tacoma, just south of the Tacoma Dome, and including a science wing of the Protective School in Seattle and a new Everett Clinic up in Marysville. And so those are the folks we beat out for this project, and that was sort of quite a big feather in the cap of folks like Gwen and Mr. Mayor out there, the manager of the YMCA. Why don't you guys go ahead and stand up and be recognized for this? City and YMCA there. Our sister cities program is going strong. We just had 10 students from our sister city in Gangshin, Korea arrived. They're in town now with all their host families, and tomorrow afternoon I'll be down at City Hall at 3 p.m. if anyone wants to join. We have another 8 students from Chacalcao, Peru arriving. And if anybody has an interest again in this activity, it's been a wonderful, rewarding program. And we're looking for board members and so forth. So if you have an interest, we can, all different ways we can plug into that. So lastly, I'm just going to sweep, starting at the falls, just sweep up the park really quick and talk about some of the other developments that are happening in town. So this is the PSC Plant 1 and Plant 2 developments are right on track. You can see the new penstocks and the new Plant 2 being built down below. And from what reports we're hearing, that the trail coming down to the falls and the park down below, all is scheduled to be complete and open coming this the fall of this year. So, nice improvement. The other big PSC endeavor that you've been hearing about for years, particularly given some of the long blackouts we've had, is the Mount Si substation. This has been a critical piece of infrastructure that's been needed for many years, or several years now, particularly with all the growth, that has just been completed up in the business, just past the end of Douglas up in the business park. And this will do a great deal, along with the improvements at the falls, to stabilize and provide more flexibility for the whole power grid, not only for Snoqualmie, but the upper valley. So we can anticipate, Jason won't say this, but I can assure you they wouldn't make this investment unless we can anticipate fewer blackouts and blackouts with much shorter durations when we do experience those. So that's actually a pretty good news for all of us. Just so you know where that is, they originally proposed to build it for the motion sports building this year. We thought aesthetically that might not be the nicest place in the center of a master plan community. We worked with them to eventually relocate that back in this area here where it's really sort of out of sight. And while we're on this map real quick, motion sports is in this area here, the Chase Bank being built there, the Department of Permitting and Environmental Review from King County's in this location right here, and Space Labs took over the old toothbrush building, the main one in the center of the business park. So here's the Chase Bank currently here. We have a couple of managers of that bank here. I think you guys were shooting for, was it a May opening, right? Early May? Yes. So look forward to having them. They're located right there across the street from the Key Bank. This is motion sports. I know Kevin and others have talked a lot about this in the past. I'll say very few. This is a look at the inside of this facility, which you can't miss as you leave here. 150 employees will be in there by spring, representing the 3 different companies in a very large 135,000 square foot facility. When you take these companies and combine them, they are the largest supplier of everything that you basically pull behind a boat, whether it's skis, wakeboards, kiteboards, the inflatables, ropes, vests, all that stuff. So it's quite a exciting to have them, placing themselves in Snoqualmie, located in Snoqualmie. The other big one is Space Labs. Again, about 400 employees in a 176,000 square foot facility. I was just talking to Vicki, who runs the Bayan Mongolian restaurant. She was saying that, again, the thing for all the retailers on the ridge, these companies combined, when you look at the numbers of employees, over 600, including the Department of Environmental Review with King County. That's a substantial customer base that all of you should be aggressive in going after. It's just a huge win for all the restaurants here for the kind of business. It's been a real sea change for what that offers for you. This was the grand opening with the King County Executive and Kathy Lambert and the Director, John Starver, of that department. I came out for the next ceremony. Great facility. And I really respect the executive, what they did here in terms of consolidating. It may seem an odd place to locate this, but frankly, if you think about it, their customers are in the rural areas. They're no longer doing permitting in the urban areas, so it made a lot of sense for them to relocate out here. This is on the corner of Swenson and the Parkway. This is a new apartment unit project coming in, about 100 units, and a product that we very much need, and so that'll be coming this coming year soon. And right across the street from that is a Morningstar Montessori school. They've been running in a house in the neighborhood for about 3 years. They're going to be open in 3 months. They have 3 rooms inside of here, and you'll notice there's 3 windows on the side of the building right there. And then Imagine Housing, you probably heard a little bit about this project as well. This is meeting a lot of affordable housing demands or requirements of the Ridge Master Plan. Snoqualmie has done, more than most cities, a great job of meeting and actually delivering on affordable housing. We think this is a great possibility here. This would be the proposal that Imagine is throwing out there is about 160 units, meaning those with 60% of median income in King County or less. That's a product that's very much in need. I won't say too much about that because obviously some folks know there's a lot of controversy about that, particularly with neighbors that are adjacent to this proposed location. It's been in the master plan for many years though, but Imagine Housing's been collecting a lot of data to demonstrate and show just what the metrics are and what the need is for this type of a use. And there will be a community meeting on this next Wednesday again between 7 to 9 p.m. at the YMCA, and I would encourage all of you to attend if you have an interest in that. And lastly, is the hospital. This will have about 220 employees in here. And I'm not going to say too much more about this because Roger, as I understand, you're the keynote speaker next month on this, so I won't steal any of your thunder, but this is an exciting project for all of us as well. And that's coming out there toward the end of the park near the interchange. And so I'll leave that for until the details. So with that, I am pleased to say that the state, with the community support, with the voter support, the state of the city remains vibrant and strong. And again, I thank you for the opportunity. Do we have time for questions? Are there any questions? Any cat calls? Excuse me. Mayor.
Mayor, are you going to run for re-election?
Why am I shocked that question is asked? I will be announcing this. Excuse me. I'll be announcing my decision on that at the end of February. Any other questions?
I have a question about the fields that are going in at the top of the parkway. You said they're going to be charged. Did they ever settle the lighting issue on those? Will they be lit or not?
We would have loved to put lighting on those fields. In fact, we worked with the school district to try and swap that park with the park down kind of near Swenson, where the middle school was supposed to go. Because that was in a hole surrounded by forest and whatnot. We figured lights would be hidden. We had our GIS guy put a 70-foot light pole on a computer-generated our diagram and sort of say, hey, light it up and see where you can see that hill from in Snoqualmie, see if there's much of an impact. And it pretty much lit up the entire valley. So then we tried to vote to say, okay, which council member or elected official wants to push that issue? And for some reason, no one wanted to grab that. So, yeah, you know, it would be a huge thing to put lights on there, just in terms of use and all that. Makes a huge sense, but we felt it really went just beyond protecting the community character. And so we backed off from that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Vicki? Those fields, if you drive up to the top of the parkway, just before you start dropping down toward the I-90, take a right on Jacobia at the stoplight up there, and just up at the top of the hill on the right, that's where those fields are. So it should be a beautiful park. And obviously, with the inclement weather we have, all these sports teams that have huge demands on these fields will get considerably more play time out of those fields. We won't have to rest them and they get time to get reduced.
Follow-up. What's the time of completion estimate?
Again, I think the best case scenario would be hitting the ground about early fall, Dan, if we could get in the ground this year. But if we miss that window, it's going to slip into construction probably next spring, right?
Right. We're trying for summer. The best we can.
This summer.
We're trying to start construction.
Okay. Did you hear that? Yeah. Trying, if we could, best case scenario, maybe you can get this summer, or get in the ground this summer. Any other questions? Probably out of time anyway. Well, again, thank you all so much.